But how can you teach people how to learn Legacy when you don't have any good results? It sounds like a good challenge. Let's do it with this guy.
Welcome everybody to Nose to the Grindstone, a series where we'll go from playing a deck for the very first time all the way up to top 8ing some serious events. I will be uploading, tracking, making resources and sharing everything with you all the way until we either top 8 a Legacy challenge or win a decently sized in-person Legacy event. I truly believe anyone can get to a high level at any deck in this game if they put the work in, so I intend to prove it, because if I can do it, anyone can. We're going to be looking at learning the deck Painter's Servant in Legacy, and the first question that you might ask is the obvious, why Painter? I mean, apart from the really obvious fact that the deck is one of the trickier decks in the metagame, full of very difficult technical lines, it's extremely strong, having put up great results recently. BNU took it to win the Showcase Challenge, and that's even with the fact that it's missing cards that we have in paper. But the most important thing that you always need to keep in mind when you're deciding what deck you want to learn for Legacy and what deck you want to put your time into, the most important thing is that you choose something that excites you. I really started my competitive Magic journey with Scars of Mirrodin, with Tempered Steel, and then later with Modern Affinity. Artifact synergies, artifact plans are what I'm all about. It's always been something that's really excited me, and so this is the perfect deck for me to take you along on this journey with. Now, I've obviously put some work in beforehand. It'd be really boring if you were just going to sit here and watch me just browse through deck lists. So I've kind of already done the first month. And for what I'd recommend if you're starting out is just simple 3-step plan. Number 1, find the deck that excites you. MTG Goldfish is a perfect place. You have brilliant content creators like Bosch and Roll, Frabe and you, who are bringing you a different Legacy deck basically every single day. It's never been easier than ever to go out and find the deck that just speaks to you. Second thing you need to do is find your people. If you go onto Google and you type in your archetype and then Discord, you're almost always gonna find a place, a community full of people who love the deck you love and will really help you improve. The Painter Discord is incredible. They've got channels for every kind of painter, from the mono red that I typically play, the Rakdos that I typically play in paper because of Chaos Defiler. They've also got channels covering mono blue painter, mono white painter, mono black painter, strawberry shortcake, all the weird versions of painter that have existed. There are people there who play them, love them, and make so many great resources for them. You find your Discord, they'll almost always have a resources channel that include a deck guide, example deck lists, maybe someone's done a primer or a sideboard guide. And most importantly, you're going to find people where you can go, ask questions, put replays, ask for feedback. You'll just get so much done. And honestly, in your first month, the third step is the most important one. You've just got to play. You've got to get your reps in. You're not going to be able to grasp everything. You're not going to be able to research everything all the time. You need to get out there, get playing, and start to realize kind of where you're having problems, where you're kind of struggling, and then that will feed back to the community, and you'll really start progressing much faster. So, for the first month, I pretty much just did this. I've played about 10-15 leagues with Painter at this point, and I also took it to the Nottingham Legacy Monthly this month. There'll be a tournament report after the gameplay in this video. So, what am I going to be doing before our next video? So, this entire series wouldn't make much sense if it's just me talking you through what's happening. I've got to show you me doing it. So, by the next month, I will have produced a sideboard guide for at least 15 matchups. They'll, as always, be free to access here on the channel, and I'll be showing that off in the next video. I'm going to complete a full league of mirroring. This is also known as kind of guess your move exercise. I'm going to provide an example in the next video, but simply it's just taking a video of someone who's better at the deck than you are, sitting there thinking through the decisions and comparing what you did to what they did and why one of those decisions might have been better. It's a really great way to level up, and as I said, I'll include an example in the next video. The last thing to do is to make a note of at least one matchup where you just feel clueless or that you're struggling, and to review your replays, and I really encourage you to make that a community thing. Go, speak with your community, say, hey, what do you all do against this matchup? I'm really struggling. Am I mulliganing wrong? Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing that wrong? If you go through a replay, review it, you'll get such great feedback. And again, I'm going to do that. I'm pretty sure I know already what I'm going to review. Psst, it's Blue Zenith. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, but yeah, without further ado, I know it's a magic video, it's on YouTube, I know what you're here for. Let's get to the gameplay. Okay, so we're on the play versus Satan's very own grandmother. We draw our first 7, and I don't really think it's good enough. It's got mana acceleration for sure, but the only threats we have we just can't cast, and I'm not willing to gamble on a hand like this that doesn't really have that higher power level. So we decide to mulligan, and we find something a lot more workable. Urza's Saga and Fable are game plans all by themselves, with Welder being an absolute MVP when it comes to getting value out of our artifact synergies. We keep our hand and we decide to ship the second lightning bolt. Already on turn 1 we have a decision to make. Do we develop our Welder or do we hold up our lightning bolt? With how our hand is structured, mana's going to be quite tight throughout many of the first few turns, so it can be difficult to be mana efficient and deploy either of those cards unless we do it on turn 1. Welder's the higher upside play if we can get our artifact synergies going, and it will actually do something if our opponent doesn't do anything on turn 1. However, and I may be wrong as, you know, I'm very new to this, I decided to just play Scalding Tarn and pass. My reasoning goes a little bit like this. If our opponent does nothing but play a land, the Welder line is stronger, but because we don't have many artifacts in our hand, it's not by much. We're exposing the card before we can get value off of it, and it might eat a removal spell before it does anything. If our opponent deploys a must-kill creature, such as a Mana Dork or a Mother of Runes, and we need to kill it, we'll lose the ability to turn 2 Fable if we go turn 1 Welder. Whereas if we keep the Lightning Bolt, we can bolt it, untap, and go for the turn 2 Fable. Since I think our plan is really strong even without the Welder, I choose to go for that safer Lightning Bolt line. We're immediately paid off. Our opponent plays Misty Rainforest, fetches Tropical Island, and plays Delighted Halfling. This is the exact kind of thing we want to be bolting on turn 1 and then developing our pressure. We draw a Pyroblast and have a think about our next play. We have 3 options that seem reasonable. Urza's Saga and pass, Urza's Saga play Welder and pass, or Urza's Saga Pit Spirit Guide and play Fable. I'm not entirely sure what's correct here. I went with Urza's Saga into Fable because Tropical Island Halfling implies a Bant control-ish kind of build, where they usually aren't playing days and we really want to be developing our pressure early. If the goblin lives, it'll be guaranteeing an Urza Saga construct on the next turn, in the same way that holding Simian Spirit Guide in our hand would do. And decks that lean on mana dorks generally play less efficient 2-drops, as they want to skip directly from 1 to 3, and we tend to really want to beat down hard, and so we want to develop pressure now while our opponent is stumbling. Fable resolves. This is fantastic for us. Even in the case where the goblin dies, we can still use the second mode to find the lands we need to take full advantage of our Urza Saga. Our opponent plays Tundra and our goblin eats a Swords to Plowshares. That's fine. Our deck to begin with has 21 lands in it, and since we fetched and played 2 lands, it now has 18 in it. So we're about 73% between our draw step and the Fable second chapter to find a land so we can make our Urza Saga constructs. They pass, and no land. It's okay though, we have the Fable trigger to try and find one. Let's discard our second Welder and a Pyroblast and see what we can find. There's our Ancient Tomb. Our turn now is pretty simple. We'll just simply play our Ancient Tomb, play our Welder, and pass. It's possible that on the Fable discard that keeping Pyroblast was correct as we can hold it up. I'm really not sure on that though. Our opponent fetches a Savannah and plays an Oro. Okay, it looks like our read of Bant control was spot on. On their end step, we'll make a construct and we'll just move to our turn. We drew a mountain, and now we have some pretty interesting decisions. There's the option of what to get with our Urza Saga trigger. Do we make a construct? These things can really matter, so let's go through a couple different options. We can float mana with our Urza Saga, use its trigger to get Grindstone into play. Then if we play our Engineer, we can tutor a Painter's Servant to the graveyard. Then we'll have enough mana to be able to activate Grindstone, targeting our opponent, and use Goblin Welder to make Grindstone and Painter's Servant swap places. If our opponent has no interaction for this, that would kill them on the spot. That's the traditional Painter Grindstone combo. However, if our opponent has any removal at all, this doesn't work. And if our Painter gets hit with a Swords to Plowshares, we won't be able to offer a combo next turn either. I don't really see many other lines that are good with just floating mana of the Urza Saga, so let's look at the construct lines. If we make a construct with Saga, then we can decide to either tutor up Grindstone or a Mox Opal if we think we need more mana. And then we'll develop an Engineer and we can tutor up any artifact we want. Tutoring Painter to the graveyard will again present a combo, but not much else. It feels a little bit glass cannon-y. It's key to mention though, Engineer doesn't have to get Painter. In our deck we have a copy of Phyrexian Dragon Engine. If we let our Engineer fetch that instead, we can begin to accrue card advantage. So, I decided on the following line. We'll make a construct, we'll fetch a Grindstone as I don't feel we need extra mana and it's the harder part of the combo to find in our deck. Play our Mountain, play Engineer, tutor Phyrexian Dragon Engine to the bin, swing with our constructs and pass. There's no reason to world our Dragon Engine in immediately. It only has haste if it unearths anyhow. And if our opponent has a board wipe, we'd rather world out one of the constructs for it. And if they don't, we'd rather world away the Grindstone for it. We're able to wait and get more information before making our play. Supreme Verdict. Waiting to world has paid off. We can world out one of our constructs that was about to die anyway for our Phyrexian Dragon Engine, and then we get to Ancestral Recall and draw 3 fresh cards. Not the absolute scariest possible draws, but we can set up to threaten the combo again the turn after next. Our draw step is Grindstone, so we have something that we can develop that we don't mind welding away for Phyrexian Dragon Engine or a Painter 7. I think my choice of land drop here was wrong. I think it makes more sense to play Ancient Tomb here because our life total isn't really pressured and doesn't matter much against Bant control at this stage of the game. And we'll definitely want to develop more mountains if we draw them. Either way, we play Engineer, shoot a Painter to the bin, play Grindstone and pass the turn. Our opponent ponders, plays a Teferi and bounces our Engineer. At the time, I thought this lowered the odds that they had a removal spell in hand, but now I don't think that's the case. This line makes a lot of sense if they have only one removal spell in hand, as they get to leave up Tundra and aren't dead to a top deck Painter like they would be if they used their only piece of removal on the Engineer. We draw a mountain, showing the flaws in our previous choice of land drop. We have enough mana here to play Engineer, tutor something to the bin, unearth Phyrexian Dragon Engine, and attack Teferi while getting us a new grip of cards. No other line really looked appealing to me, so I went for it, and our Engineer eats a Force of Will. That's absolutely fine by me, and I continue down our plan playing a mountain, unearthing our Phyrexian Dragon Engine, drawing our cards, and killing the Teferi. Our opponent spends their time escaping Oro and passes back over to us. We draw yet another Painter's Servant. Alright, it's time to start jamming. Our opponent says they can't beat it and scoops them up. If we kept going, I think there's an interesting decision about whether to activate Grindstone on our turn or on our opponent's upkeep. I think I would have chosen the upkeep, as it means our opponent doesn't see any extra cards, and it sets us up better to try again next turn a little better. But there is an argument that there might be some removal spell that they can't cast with the mana they currently have that I'm letting them into, though I don't really think that's the case.
Okay, and now on to the tournament report. So, this month we played at Nottingham Legacy Monthly. It's a fantastic event held in Underworld Games in Nottingham. There's always a ton of strong competition, and this month it was 5 rounds with a cut to top 8. Round 1, we played against Yes, or Urian Ephemerate Spellseeker. It's a Blue Zenith style toolbox deck with a combo that can lock opponents out of sorcery speed plays. Game 1, we managed to take the feet from under them by killing their mana dorks and I think a Spellseeker and maybe an Eternal Witness with a Fury, and that was backed up by Fable Pressure as they used their removal and interaction to try and stabilize against our beatdown. We presented the combo and closed the game. Game 2, they did the lock that they're trying to set up for. So, they had a Spellseeker and an Eternal Witness on the board, and in their hand they had an Ephemerate and an Orim's Chant. So on our upkeep, the Orim's Chant us, we're not able to cast any spells, we're not able to attack. Then they Ephemerate the Eternal Witness to get that Orim's Chant back to their hand. And then on their upkeep, when the Ephemerate rebounds, they target the Eternal Witness again. The Eternal Witness now puts the Ephemerate back in their hand, and they've got the loop going. A Teferi followed shortly after establishing this. Now we were locked out of playing spells for the rest of the game, and we scooped it up and moved to Game 3. Game 3, I draw my 7, look at it. It's got a Great Furnace, it's got a Mountain, it's got a Welder, it's got a Goblin Engineer. We're on the play. Okay, so I go Mountain, Goblin, Welder, pass over to them. They go Land, Greenstone Zenith for a Dryad Arbor. Actually, no, they went land and play Mana Dork. The Greenstone Zenith was the previous game. Sorry about that. Then we go Great Furnace, play a Goblin Engineer, shoot a Chaos Welder to the bin. Then we use the Welder to swap our Great Furnace and the Chaos Defiler. We blow up their Mana Dork. We are now, ridiculously ahead, and we just managed to beat them down before they could stabilize and beat that start. Opponent was really fun. I really enjoyed talking to them about their deck. They really feel like it's not well positioned for the Orcish Bowmasters meta, and I would tend to agree. It is leaning on a lot of X1s, but it does look like a blast and a really, really interesting take on the Blue Zenith style game plan. Round 2, we went against a more traditional Blue Zenith list with Omnath. There wasn't really much to say gameplay-wise. Our opponent played really well. We kind of didn't. We really kind of got locked out by just a flurry of a ton of removal spells, backed up by the card advantage that their deck produces. I didn't call a judge over an interaction when I should have. Don't be like me, everyone, especially when you're new to a deck. There are going to be things that you don't quite get or don't fully understand yet. Always call a judge. When what happened, and it was to do with Fable of the Mirror Breaker, my opponent told me how they thought it should be fixed. And it sounded reasonable to me at the time, and I didn't call a judge. This was a big mistake. I don't think they did this on purpose, but the fix that they suggested was incorrect. And if I'd called a judge, I would have gotten the correct resolution. I don't think it really would have mattered for the round in general. Our opponent played extremely well, and what they suggested sounded really plausible, and I do truly believe that's how they thought it should be fixed. I don't think it's someone trying to angle shoot me. I think it was someone just giving an honest perspective. But even with that in the case, it was a mistake. It did lead to a disadvantage for me, and I shouldn't have let that happen. I should have just put my arm up, shouted judge, and got the correct ruling. I really need to work on how I play against these decks, I believe. It's quite a complicated matchup. You've got this really nice control shell, and then they've got tons of hate pieces that they can easily get a hold of with Greenstone Zenith, like Collector Roof. So there's a lot of different levels that you need to move through to get through this one. Round 3, we played versus Sphere Lands. The games were fantastic. Our opponent played extremely well, and I think I played pretty well as well. Sphere of Resistance out of lands is such an absolute beating when we're on the draw. But even that being factored in, the games felt incredibly close, and I think if one of us made a mistake, it would have tipped either way. So the way they really played tightly just secured the round for them. I'm really quite impressed with how they played. Game 1, they ended up ghost quartering all of the lands out of my deck. That's a win for them. And then game 2, I managed to get through the sphere lock and develop more, and then the spheres kind of prevented them from stopping us going. Game 3, we're on the draw, they develop a quick sphere, and on the next turn they develop another sphere, and we really couldn't quite stabilize before they just closed the round on us. It's one of those games, though, where I think there were things that I probably could have done better, and I really wish that I'd recorded it. So that might be something that I do in the future. I might bring a camera to record games like that, because I think if I had a replay, I would be able to review it, and I would gain so much from it. It's really interesting, really complex Magic, and I really hope I run into our opponent in future events, because yeah, it was an absolute blast. Okay, round 4, we were against Urian Death Shadow. This is an innovative build of Death Shadow being pioneered by Mr. UC on Twitter, or Ikada on Mitgo. They're a really cool person, extremely strong Shadow player, really made a name for themselves playing 60-card Death Shadow in Legacy. And now they've presented this really innovative 80-card Urian Death Shadow build. I believe they came 9th in the most recent showcase. Just an absolutely brilliant deck, brilliant player. Our opponent was a ton of fun to interact with. They've played Painter in the past, so we had a good amount of chatting about that. I didn't have to explain anything about how my deck was going. So in game 1, we presented our typical mid-range plan. As they were trying to deal with that, we managed to develop a combo, and that got there. Game 2, our opponent had turn 2 Null Rod into quite a lot of pressure, and we just couldn't stabilize against it. Game 3, it's one of those heartbreakers. We draw our first 7, 1 land is wastelandable. Can't keep that against any Death Shadow list. They will just wasteland you and you will lose. Okay, then we draw 7 and no lands. Okay, so we have to mulligan to 5. We actually keep a pretty strong 5 if there's no disruption, which admittedly is a big if, but you know. We can present all our combo pieces as early as turn 2 and hit them with a turn 3 combo. Unfortunately, our opponent goes turn 1 Thoughtseize, takes one of our pieces. Next turn they go land, Null Rod. We're so behind in cards, our artifact synergies are turned off, just can't really do anything, and our opponent cleans us up shortly thereafter. And then round 5, we played against Mystic Forge combo. This is kind of all the rage online at the minute. It's this extremely explosive mono-brown artifact combo deck. The opponent we played against is someone we've played at this event before. They're always a blast. We jammed some Canadian Highlander together after the round. I played Jun Lands. They played kind of like 4-color control list. It was a ton of fun. Really, really enjoyable. Game 1, we took maximum advantage of the fact that our Goblin Welder can do its thing to the opponent's artifacts as well, and so kept them from fully developing. Game 2, our opponent keeps 7, or maybe it was 6, and starts with a really powerful start. Ancient Tomb, tap it for 2 mana, Manifold Key, Manifold Key. Unfortunately for them, we kept a hand with a Pithing Needle in it, so turn 1 we go land, Pithing Needle, name the key. This slows them down immensely. They have none of these other untap effects in their hand. So they play some cards, try and get going, and then we start developing worlders, another interaction, and we kind of just stop them getting functional until they're just gonna die to our beatdown. So, you know, we had a Heartbreaker last round. We gave our opponent a Heartbreaker this round. Up and down. That's kind of the way Legacy is sometimes. Okay, so just going to quickly talk about what the future of this series is. So I'm going to give updates as often as I can, but I'll definitely be checking in at least once a month with a tournament report for a big tournament a month. So either that'll be a Legacy Challenge or a Nottingham Legacy Monthly or something like an Axion event. We're going to keep going, keep uploading, keep progressing, keep focusing on Painter until we top 8 a Legacy Challenge or win a paper event with 30 players or more. I might provide more frequent updates than once a month, such as filmed Modo gameplay videos or something to do with how I'm trying to progress that month. Like if I think making a deck tech for a list that I've kind of tinkered with would help me have a greater knowledge of how the deck functions, I might upload a deck tech video for my build separately to the main update video. If you're watching this, thank you so much for sticking around towards the end. Your feedback for this series is going to be crucial and greatly, greatly appreciated. If you tell me what you want to see as part of this, what kind of things would really help you with your journey learning Legacy and learning your deck, let me know. I will do whatever I can to make this series the best possible thing I can do. I really want this to succeed. I really want to progress. And thank you so much for staying till the end. And I will catch you next time.